Welcome back to Old School Sports and episode number 17 of our adventure in Pro Wrestling Sim. I want to start off by thanking all of our loyal viewers, especially the commenters who give us suggestions known as the Board of Directors and the most recent members of the board of directors who have given us a lot of good feedback to think about based on the last episode. Jack, Katie St. Clair, and Sage Dirks. Definitely appreciate all of the thoughts and suggestions and wisdom and advice. If you're new to the channel, would appreciate it if you think about subscribing to the channel, giving us a thumbs up, and joining the board of directors by sharing a comment or two about what you think we should do. And we are in a pretty good situation here as the year of 2025 begins. Our finances exploded in a very positive way last year once we achieved cult status with 40 popularity and were able to start getting network television and pay-per-view contracts. Not making insane money off of those, but compared to where we were, it's pretty insane where we were financially at this point. Things have gotten more competitive, though, since we hit that cult status. You can see the pace of our popularity growth is definitely slowing. And that's because we are now, even though we are a cult promotion, involved in a pretty significant battle with a couple of more prominent promotions. You can see we do have a strong public image at this point based in North America, but cult status. But our only popularity is in North America. We've essentially got no presence anywhere else. But every week, every time we have a match, we find out how we're competing with two of the most prominent promotions in the world. Global Championship Wrestling, the national promotion in North America. You can see much more popular than us in North America, and much more popular than we are around the world. We're being matched up with them. They've got a higher public image than we do. And then we're also matched up against the behemoth. You can see they've got over $1 billion in resources, Alpha Pro Wrestling, global scale, and they've got massive popularity across the world. So we're still trying to catch up with and compete with both of those promotions. But since we're generally still losing that battle at this point, the pace of our increases in popularity has slowed. And you can see we've actually dipped from time to time when we haven't actually had a show. So that leads us to some of the suggestions that have been shared by Jack, Katie St. Clair, and Sage Dirks. And I think a number of suggestions, obviously, but when I try to boil their really good suggestions down to what's most actionable for us, three things that bubble up to the top. Think about expanding into new geographies, and we are going to make a push into Europe this year. We're going to have our first show in London at the end of this month of January. We should be able to make decent money putting that show on in sending the show via network television or pay-per-view back to the United States. But you can see our potential attendance, given how we essentially have no presence at all in Europe, is going to be much lower than we're used to at the actual event. So this could end up being a painful learning experience for us. But as we'll talk about shortly, even though we've never had a show outside of North America before, and only a handful of shows in Canada, to be honest, we do have some wrestlers who do have some degree of popularity in Europe. So we're going to try to use them judiciously in these first, I believe we've got 4 shows in Europe planned this year, and hopefully start making some inroads there. Also got the suggestion from the board of directors to perhaps introduce another belt into the mix. Right now, promotion owner Ricky Babylon is the men's world champion and also the tag team champion, along with his partner Julius Dyer. Obviously, that means that even in the biggest card possible that we put on, there can only be one men's champion match because we're not going to have Babylon wrestling twice. So the thought from some of the members of the board was to perhaps add a lightweight championship to go with the heavyweight championship that Ricky Babylon currently holds. Looking at the wrestlers we have on board, really everybody's a heavyweight or a super heavyweight, light heavyweight, or cruiserweight. Have just a couple of wrestlers that aren't, kind of in those upper weight classes. So instead, we borrowed from the WWF/WWE, and we are introducing a new title. It fits well with our expansion into London, but the new title that's going to be available is the 3W Intercontinental Championship. The original WWF/WWE Intercontinental Championship represented North America and South America, but it definitely did expand to cross the ocean to Europe and beyond. And since our first foray into Europe, into other geographies, is going to be into Europe, I think the name, the Intercontinental Championship, still makes sense. So it'll be another belt. And what we're going to do at our 3W Live event in January, we're going to have a couple of Rumble events with faces in one and heels in another. And the two winners of that Rumble event, which isn't necessarily going to include people like Ricky Babylon, obviously, will then be facing off in London at the end of the month to crown the first Intercontinental Champion of the Wild World of Wrestling promotion. And the last of the three key suggestions we got, other than new geographies and new belts, were something that I had touched upon at the end of the last episode, and that was more shows. And you can see right now we've got 5 shows planned in the month of January. Intend to have 4 or 5 shows every month. I believe we did 46 shows last year. The goal is to get that number into the 50s this year. Many of our top competitors still did 60-plus shows. If things go well with the European expansion, if things go well as we try building out our roster and getting more and more lucrative television promotions, maybe we start upping that number from 4 or 5 to 5 or 6 a month as the year moves along, and we could end up with more like 55 to 60 shows when all is done. But going to try to ensure that we are putting on shows even more regularly than we have before to keep popularity moving up, both in Europe and North America, of course, and also hopefully get the pace of popularity in North America more quick, back to what it was back in the days, by hopefully doing a little better in the competition with Alpha Pro Wrestling and Global Championship Wrestling. A couple of other things that we've been working on since the last episode. I mentioned that I was going to be spending a lot of time offline thinking about things and really trying to hopefully take the promotion to the next level. We've added in a few new tag teams, switched up a couple of tag teams due to retirement of Marvin McNeil in one specific situation, and then also just trying to add a little bit of new life into some of the tag team matches. We've brought on a couple of new wrestlers in introductory contracts, pay per appearance now, that maybe will move into written contracts going forward. You can see right now we're at 20 faces and 19 heels. We've got pending contract offers out to many members of our promotion, particularly some of the women's wrestlers who have been with us over time, really trying to make sure that we have a more consistent presence in that part of the show, and then also lock up some referees, announcers, and men's talent as well. And we will have certainly other contract expirations coming up as we try to move from primarily a pay-per-appearance promotion, which we were entirely a year ago, to right now a pretty even split between pay per appearance and written contracts, to a promotion that's much more focused on written contracts. So definitely focused on getting extensions signed with a number of wrestlers. Also continue to work on TV deals. The goal is to have just about every show, or actually every show, on either network television or pay-per-view. Because we are still a cult promotion, we tend to make more on the pay-per-view than on the network contracts. But we're going to continue doing short-term contracts basically just for this year's show, seeing how we do financially, and hopefully learn more and more about what will be successful and what won't be successful. And some information on the TV contracts front that we'll be talking about more as we get into some of our September shows, learn some interesting things that we'll get into more detail on going forward. As we begin the year in pretty good shape medically, Ansley Howard, who I believe was injured in her first match with us several months ago, should be recovered from that bicep injury before the end of the month. So it'll be nice to get her back into the ring and hopefully get her career off to a little bit more of a faster start than it has been. You can see we are making a written contract offer to her. I think she's talented, and hopefully we'll have her as part of the fold going forward. Backstage morale as we begin the year, still outstanding at a 100 level. Chris Jackson remains a pretty negative presence, but he's also a pretty talented wrestler, particularly in his wrestling skill, which will help us to hopefully remain competitive in those promotion wars with some of the bigger names in the business. And clearly we've got so many people as a positive presence. And with Marvin McNeil's retirement, we've now got 4 key members of the team backstage providing order to hopefully keep morale really high. Finances, as we've talked about, in a really good shape at this point. We've been making hundreds of $1,000s a month ever since we decided to do TV contracts, but that's also when we had the opportunity to do TV contracts. Made a lot less last month, but that was because we signed a lot of written contracts with upfront signing bonuses to some of our talent. Clearly going to be trying to do the same thing this month as well, but then I think the pace of the upfront signing bonuses will slow, and hopefully we'll be making even more money each month going forward. Merchandise, as of the month of December, Ricky Babylon obviously still the dominant member, but with more and more people signing written contracts and more wrestlers expanding their popularity, you can see we are diversifying a bit away from being almost entirely reliant on Ricky Babylon to generate merchandise sales for us. And storylines, we had 2 existing ones at the end of the year. Long-standing one with some of the top heels chasing Ricky Babylon, and then some of the prominent wrestlers that we welcomed last year. Both have a lot of heat and are going to continue. And then we're also going to get a couple of new storylines going this year. Some of the younger and higher quality wrestlers who we've either already locked up to written contracts or intend to when we have the opportunity in the coming months are guys that we'd like to build around going forward. I think there could be some strong contenders from this group for the Intercontinental Championship. So the new generation is going to be a storyline that we hopefully get some momentum with this year. And you may remember that at the end of last year, Mercedes Rose defeated Alani Hernandez for the Women's Championship. Alani Hernandez and her partner Kirsten Holloway do remain the Women's Tag Team Champions. But Alani Hernandez, as well as McKenna McKee, who won the Rumble last year for an opportunity to take on the women's champion, along with Isabella Baxter, one of our more popular face wrestlers, are all going to be involved in a storyline chasing and or perhaps helping Mercedes Rose defend her women's championship in the coming months. So a lot of interesting things to think about. I think we're still making good progress with the promotion, and hopefully we can keep that going here in 2025. Have a big show to start things off for the new year. We'll go through this one event by event. A couple of our new tag teams will be participating. The Right Stuff, a new tag team against Hughes and Simpson, which is a heel team that did have one match together last year, but Case and Hughes had been with Jordan Cunningham as a very prominent tag team for us over the last few years. When Jordan Cunningham signed a written contract away from us, had to find Hughes a new partner, and he's going to be with Mr. Simpson. Julius Dyer and Juan Shepard, a couple of the wrestlers involved in the New Generation storyline, are going to face off, and they both have pretty high entertainment skill, so we're going to try to hopefully derive some laughs out of that match and get a good score there. You will remember that McKenna McKee won a women's rumble for us late in December to earn the opportunity to take on the new champion, Mercedes Rose, for the women's championship. Clearly we'll have Alani Hernandez in that, getting a chance to try to win her championship back at some point in the future, whether Mercedes Rose or McKenna McKee ends up holding it. The Horde versus the Dynamic Duo, another relatively inexperienced team, the Horde, which includes Chris Jackson, against the Dynamic Duo, a new team that we put together. A first blood match between a couple of main event wrestlers, Keith Yates and Kyle Howard, that we honestly haven't been able to establish a ton of momentum with over the years. Keith Yates was one of our original wrestlers who's been with us since the very early days of this, and we've had Kyle Howard with us for a couple of years now. Trying to get a little bit of momentum for both of those wrestlers, but honestly, they could be guys whose futures with us are not all that long. At this point, they're both involved in contracts that expire in September of 2026. So they're going to be with us for the next year and a half or so. But if we can't start getting more momentum out of those guys, they could be wrestlers that we eventually move on from. And then last but not least, Ricky Babylon against Garrett Carter, frequent championship match that we've had in the past. And Garrett Carter did win a Rumble in December to earn the right for another championship shot at Ricky Babylon. So we will get the first card of the year started. Started off with a big video with high quality production to start promoting some of the new and existing storylines, hopefully get some momentum going there. And then also entrances for the women's championship match between McKenna McKee and Mercedes Rose goes over very well, driven by their star power and good looks. First match of the day, a tag team match, only a 56% score. I mentioned the Right Stuff, a new tag team. Bobby Ray Wright teaming up with Jose Melton, and Bobby Ray Wright and Jose Melton get the victory. You'll remember that Melton was in the past teamed up with Marvin McNeil, and at the one point they were tag team champions known as the M&M Boys. But with Marvin McNeil retiring and moving into a back office role with us, needed a new partner for Josue Melton, and him and Bobby Ray Wright team up and get a victory in their first match together. Mentioned that we were going to try to do some comedy in this match with Julius Dyer and Juan Shepard, and it went over well. Pretty solid score, 69%, 3-star match quality. Julius Dyer with the victory, so hopefully that will drive some decent momentum for Dyer. You can see he moved up 0.4 of a point in North American popularity just based on this one match. So trying to get some momentum going for both of those wrestlers who are part of one of our new storylines. Next up, the women's championship match, and Mercedes Rose defends her title, 71% score. So that's a really good score compared to some of the women's matches that we've had over the years. Certainly adding in more talented wrestlers like Mercedes Rose and McKenna McKee will hopefully help with that. Next match, another tag team match. As I noted before, a new tag team. The dynamic duo Cameron Bright and Alex Wolf get the victory over Chris Jackson and Juan Pablo Saavedra, a couple of heels who are also a relatively new tag team with one another, although they did fight together once last year, known as the Horde. 3.5-star match quality. These match scores in the 50s and 60s are much higher than where we were a year, 2 years, 3 years ago consistently. But now, since our show scores can cap out at 70%, continue to need higher and higher match scores. And the hope is that some of the angles that we work throughout the cards will help us ensure that we get to that 70% cap for the time being. Not sure what's going to happen in this match with Keith Yates and Kyle Howard. As I mentioned, wrestlers that we've generally struggled to get a lot of momentum going with. Keith Yates does get the victory, but the score certainly not exceptional. Hopefully we'll get our best score out of the day, out of the title match. Only 2.5-star match quality, which was a little disappointing, but still a strong crowd reaction and an 83% final score. Ricky Babylon's star power helps us out, and I had Marvin McNeil do the agenting for this. You'll remember we gave him a championship match to try to win the title against Ricky Babylon in the last match of his career back in December, and he has now moved into the backstage and back office for us, but he's very good in terms of his agenting and helped Garrett Carter's performance there. Last but not least, we're going to have an interview with Ricky Babylon talking about the 3 guys chasing him down, as well as their agent, their manager more accurately. And Babylon, when he does these interviews, tends to lose a little popularity because he's talking about people that are less popular than him, but positively good momentum for everybody else who was involved in this storyline. Look to end the show, and we do get to the 70% score that we are maxed out at. Could have been as high as 74, so a good, solid start to the year for the Wild World of Wrestling promotion. Let's check in on attendance and the finances. Made $176,000. We tried the show on network television rather than pay-per-view. You may remember that we're generally making $200,000 to $250,000 on pay-per-view shows, so a little less money made on network television, but it wasn't that long ago that we weren't even making in 6 figures on network television, and we do get a lot more viewers to hopefully help drive some interest going forward when we do it on network TV. So although we're going to remain pay-per-view focused, probably will have less of an imbalance between pay-per-view and network television this year, as the financial hit by being on network television is not as significant as it was for us even 6 months ago, and it does give us exposure to more viewers. Sold all but 11 tickets in the 5,000 capacity arena, so just barely missed a sellout, over $174,000 in ticket sales, and the year is off to a good start, we hope, here for the Wild World of Wrestling. And it looks like all of the contract offers that we put out there have been accepted. Ryan Mooney is going to be one of the more expensive ones, $17,500 a month, but we think he is a very talented wrestler, relatively young, and he is somebody that we want to build around. Mention that we're using him in a storyline going forward. I think he's a strong contender to potentially become our first Intercontinental Champion. So we actually signed him to a 5-year deal. Hopefully that will pay off for us. Skylar Trevino, going to be making $7,000 a month. Anastasia Romero, $4,750 a month. Isabella Baxter, the same, $4,750. Emma Banks, a little less, $4,500 a month. Jeffrey Weeks, the announcer, going to be moving to a written contract with us. Kirsten Holloway, another one of our women wrestlers on board. Ansley Howard, the one who's been injured for quite some time, only wrestled in that one match for us. Not going to be making quite as much a month as some of the other women's wrestlers. Enoch Duke will be officially on contract as a referee for us. Lower card wrestler Theodore Villarreal, $2,500 a month. He does have some potential, though, so we signed him to a 3-year contract. Think he's someone we could build around going forward. Valentino Ballard, similarly, a lower mid-card wrestler for us at this point, but does have some youth where we think he can improve, and some talent where we don't mind having him on the lower levels of the card for the next couple of years at a relatively decent amount that we'll be paying him. And it's possible that he grows into someone pretty valuable for us going forward. And so we've officially signed those wrestlers to contracts. You can see the exclusive contracts all signed here. Does have that little weird quirk that we noticed last time with between the time they sign their written contracts and their existing often pay per appearance contracts signed with us. It looks like we have many more wrestlers signed because the people who are technically signed to 2 contracts are double counted for whatever reason. Looks like GCW facing some financial issues, making some difficult choices. They've released several wrestlers and staff members. So this could be an opportunity for us. We're going to take a look and see if they've actually released anybody yet. It may just be on the same day. So can see several prominent wrestlers moving on from GCW. We're going to take a look at them and see if perhaps there's somebody interesting that we can pluck from them. Did notice when we looked at the promotions before that Alpha Pro Wrestling, as we noted, has over $1 billion, but GCW, although they are certainly a more prominent promotion from us, has been struggling financially. They've probably got a little less money than we do at this point, even though they are a much more prestigious promotion. So hopefully their pain can be our gain. We're not going to try to add anyone into our roster who's going to be a big problem in the backstage and not get along well with others regardless of their talent. But hopefully there will be somebody interesting we can bring on board who's either going to be a great wrestler and a positive influence, or at least a great wrestler and not too negative an influence as we try to improve the 3W. And there are definitely some interesting wrestlers for us to consider coming out of Global Championship Wrestling. Danny Canyon was a mid-carder there, but very talented. I tend to really try to avoid wrestlers with a creepy vibe backstage. He's also 48 years old, so he wouldn't necessarily be with us for the long term. Only looking for $25,000 a month. Kind of funny because $25,000 a month just 7 or 8 months ago in this game was a massive amount of money to us that there was no way we could possibly spend. And now it's not something that's fearful to us, which is good that we're improving our finances, but I don't have him as a preferred guy for us to try to bring on board. Riley Young, though, if we're looking to build out the women's wrestling component, right now we've got 6 faces and 5 heels. I had brought on a new face recently, basically thinking that we would move on from one of them and go with 5 and 5, but Riley Young is so talented that she may be worth considering bringing on board if it doesn't completely disrupt what we're having to pay people. Incredibly popular in North America, great looks and star power, and also a very good wrestler with very good entertainment skills. Does have anger issues and pretty anxious, but outspoken personality, not necessarily going to be great in the locker room either. Looking for $181,000 a month and over $40,000 per appearance. As great an ad as I think she would be, tend to think that number's a little bit too high for us right now, even though I was just saying that 25,000 doesn't bother me, but 7 or 8 times more a month for one wrestler is a concern. Legend Pittman, another mid-carder. Don't love the narcissism as a personality trait. A little weird that known to be narcissistic, but is also respectful of others. Those things seem a little bit contradictory, but really good looks, star power, wrestling skill, and entertainment. Another person, though, who's looking for over $180,000 a month may just be too much too soon for us. 2 really quality wrestlers also, River Tate, main eventer, respectful of others, driven to be the best, an old school mindset, 29 years old. Not as jump off the page in terms of some of his skills as the others. Look, star power, entertainment, and wrestling skill are all good and solid, but not incredible. But very popular around the world, including in Europe. $150,000 a month is a little more reasonable than some of the other people that we're looking at. We still are going to play things conservative, though. We would not mind bringing him on board. So we're going to offer him a 90-day contract to join us as a main event heel. $18,000 per appearance. At this point, clearly it's going to be a big financial commitment if we decide to sign somebody like him to a bigger contract and a written contract, in the 6 figures per month. Definitely want to see another little bit of our finances before we make a move like that. But we will try to at least build a relationship with him, and he did accept that pay-per-appearance contract with us. Doesn't mean that Alpha Pro Wrestling is not going to come in and try to come over us with a bid and take him right away from us, which is certainly possible with the finances that they have. But we'll try to build around him. And then Andre Freeman is incredibly talented. Wrestling skill, entertainment, both outstanding. Good looks, good star power, one of the most popular wrestlers in the world. Is selfish, but with his skill set, if there was a way to bring him on board in a financially responsible way, we'd have to do it. The son of Marcus Freeman, Jada Freeman is a relative of his, so he is part of a wrestling family and incredibly skilled. The issue is he's looking for over $400,000 a month, so just not practical for us to bring him on board. He also wants creative control over potential matches. We're going to do an informal agreement with him for the next 3 months, paying him $50,000 a show, see if we can avoid giving him creative control, but my hunch is with where he is in his career, he's not going to go for that. He actually does accept it, I guess, since it's just a temporary thing. So Andre Freeman and River Tate, both on pay-per-appearance contracts. We're going to do the same thing, or at least attempt to do the same thing with Riley Young at this point. At least see in a 90-day contract with her if we can get value. Try to get, given that she is looking for over 42,000. See if we took away the creative control from Freeman. She's not asking for creative control, but we'll try to save a little bit by saving $2,300 an appearance. And she accepts that as well. So with Riley Young, River Tate, and Andre Freeman, three potentially extremely high quality wrestlers for us to use over the next 3 months. And at least now we'll become aware if they get a written contract offer from somebody else that we might want to think about matching. Can't imagine we'll bring all three on board permanently, but maybe we'll find the money to develop longer term relationships with Freeman, Tate, and or Young as time moves on. And our new addition, Andre Freeman, already put in a request for a longer match. That'll be easy for us to give him, with his skill set, a 15-minute match. Not going to be anything scary. Promotional war report, we're basically in a draw over the first week of the year with APW. We win as far as the cool factor. We win with star quality and wrestling skill right now as well as the best looking roster. They continue to beat us in terms of their production quality, which obviously helps influence their show quality. They also have a more entertaining roster than us, and their wrestler popularity easily beats us. Looking at GCW, though, their problems continue. GCW beats us in the cool factor, and we draw with them on the entertaining roster. But we're beating them in production quality. We beat them in show quality, star quality, wrestling skill, best looking roster, and we actually beat them in popularity at this point with some of the additions that we've been making in recent months, and also the fact that they just had to let some pretty popular wrestlers go. So a positive sign there for us. You can see popularity spiking back up to where we were before the end of December when we didn't run an event. Got a show coming up in Canada in just a few days. Next time we'll check in, it will be with the bigger 3W live show in January, because as I mentioned, I think that one's going to be really interesting because we're going to do those two Rumble matches to hopefully determine who's going to be competing for the inaugural Intercontinental Championship when we make our debut in London at the end of the month. And I know I mentioned I wasn't going to check in until the Live in January event, but with things changing so much, a couple of interesting things that I wanted to share. We did add in a storyline, Pleased to Meet You, with the big, at least temporary additions to our promotion from Andre Freeman, Riley Young, and River Tate. So maybe if we get a little momentum going with them and help them improve their already very strong popularity, perhaps that helps us retain them down the line. Although, as I noted, I think the expenses involved with all three of them, particularly Freeman and Young, are likely to keep them from becoming important parts of our future as much as I'd like them to be. Backstage morale with those additions is still 100, but interestingly, the two very expensive additions, Andre Freeman and Riley Young, are both horribly negative presences. So perhaps not the worst thing in the world if we move on from them, but for the time being, they can help us hopefully with some strong match scores. And we're going to find out today with this event in Canada. Going to have Ricky Babylon signing them to contracts. And ultimately, Riley Young will be facing Miriam Preston in a match. And Andre Freeman and River Tate are going to face off against each other. The interesting thing is $108,000 of the $112,000 in wages associated with the show are with those three new wrestlers. Freeman, $50,000 per appearance, Riley Young, $40,000, and then River Tate, $18,000, as you can see. So I can't imagine it's going to work incredibly well with where we are as a promotion, that we're going to get those three involved permanently. But as I do think about $112,000 in wages, we are making 150,000, 200, sometimes $250,000 a show in terms of our TV rights and our pay-per-view. So maybe it will work out. Certainly anticipating some big things with the show today. Strong reaction to the angle of the signing of them all to their 90-day contracts. I don't think we're advertising that it's just a 90-day contract as part of the angle, but we're introducing those three very popular and famous and accomplished wrestlers as members of the wild world of wrestling. Introductions ahead of a couple of the women's matches go very well, although Miriam Preston continues to need more momentum. My hunch is Preston is going to get destroyed by Riley Young in the match that's coming up right now. Strong score there. Star power and good looks of Riley Young add to the match, and a 67% score. Certainly a success. No surprise that Riley Young with the victory. Kind of a lower card tag team match. Some guys who may or may not end up with us for the long term. Talked about Valentino Ballard not that long ago. He is someone who we think has some potential. Xander Berry is a guy who's been with us since the very early stages. Not sure what his future really holds. Southern Gentlemen get the win, but the final score certainly nothing great. The Nasty Girls, Alani Hernandez and Kirsten Holloway, do successfully retain their championship over the American Girls, Isabella Baxter and Emma Banks. The two new wrestlers with a strong result, 4-star match quality. Given their wrestling skill, we had them aim to steal the show, and an 89% final score is obviously very strong for our promotion. Last match of the day, men's tag team championship. The Dream Team, Ricky Babylon and Julius Dyer, retain their title over the Bash Brothers, Kyle Howard and Rodrigo Schmidt. Not the strongest match quality in the world. And now some angles going forward. Have a promo here promoting some of the new edition storylines with Mercedes Rose and Riley Young, and then some of the competition among the women for their title as well, and a 95% final score there. So that is hopefully at least leveraging the great popularity of Riley Young a bit while we have her involved. River Tate, the new addition, calls out Ricky Babylon and challenges him to a match. Ricky Babylon's manager, Samara Lester, ends up setting up that match. So we could have a future match down the line between River Tate and Ricky Babylon while River Tate is with us. And as I noted, given that River Tate is a lot less expensive than Andre Freeman or Riley Young, and he's also not as disruptive, at least at this point, we don't think, to morale and the locker room. I think of those three wrestlers, River Tate at this stage is probably the most realistic for us to think about signing to a contract in 3 months. Last but not least, usual promotional video trying to hit on some of the big themes involved, good production quality, and a big score there. Ultimately got capped out at 70%, could have gotten to 75%. So all things considered for a relatively short show, only 60 minutes and 5 matches, things went reasonably well. We gave Andre Freeman the 15-minute match that he had hoped. Made over $260,000 in pay-per-view. Sold out the smaller arena there. GCW planning a big push for Charles Webster. So moving forward a bit, hopefully we can keep the momentum going. The big live event in January is only a week away, and we will be heading across the pond for our first match ever in Europe in less than 3 weeks. And good news in the promotional war report after those big additions we made and a good card. We actually beat APW this week 4-3. They still crush us in popularity, beat us a little bit in entertainment, and still have the production quality edge on us. GCW, not surprisingly, with the departures that they've faced, we seem to now be clearly ahead of them in the promotion wars, which is hurting their popularity. So, at the very least, if we can kind of remain 1-1 ahead of GCW and neutral to occasionally behind APW, and perhaps on occasion, like we just did this past week, beating them, hopefully it will continue an upswing in the popularity for our promotion. And we've made it to the big event of the month, 3W Live in January, going to be taking place in Texas as we continue trying to take over the United States and ultimately North America and then the world in terms of the popularity of our promotion. As noted earlier, there's going to be the two big Rumble matches as the featured matches for this show. 6 faces in a Rumble and 6 heels in a Rumble to determine who will ultimately get the opportunity to face off in London in a couple of weeks for the initial Intercontinental title belt. A couple of other interesting matches. Women's going to tag team championship for the second straight card, going to be on and up for grabs. Chris Jackson going to take on Skylar Trevino, and then a couple of important wrestlers to us getting their first action of the year. Cowboy Landon Brown and Elias David, two of our more experienced veterans, two guys who are, in my mind, a little too prominent at this point to be at least involved in the Rumble for the Intercontinental Championship. Who knows where that title will go in the coming weeks and months and years, but felt that they were both a little further along in their careers to be going for it right now, but doesn't mean that that won't change down the line. Get this show started. Introductions ahead of the Women's Tag Team Championship match. Unfortunately, Alex Wolf injured 7 minutes into the first match. We are going to cut to the finish. And Alex Wolf gets the win. It was 3-star match quality, 63% final score. Villarreal's performance worse than usual. Could have been better with more time to tell a story. They were trying to steal the show, and they were wrestling very well. They're both young, lower card wrestlers for us who do have some wrestling talent. So certainly disappointing that we may be losing Alex Wolf for some period of time, particularly with the fact that we were just about to get Ansley Howard back and be completely healthy. So that will likely not be the case. Moving on to the next segment, the Nasty Girls retain their championship against Fire and Ice. That 55% final score not really helping us. Hopefully we'll be doing better going forward. Chris Jackson with the victory over Skylar Trevino. Big expectations for this next match between Cowboy Landon Brown and Elias David. Good match quality and a 77% final score. Cowboy Landon Brown with the victory. And now let's see what happens with these long Rumble matches and who emerges. I put in Jaden Noble and Ryan Mooney as I think the last two to enter the rings in their respective matches. I think that they are probably the two most talented wrestlers. Could make a case for maybe Julius Dyer or perhaps Bobby Ray Wright coming out among the faces. Could certainly make a case for the likes of Juan Pablo Saavedra or Daniel Schwartz coming out among the heels, but tend to think Noble and Mooney are the two best. We'll see what happens, and you'll notice that in the video afterwards I do highlight both Jaden Noble and Ryan Mooney. I think they're going to come out of these if things go according to plan, but it is going to be based purely on the wrestling talent. And Julius Dyer gets the victory. So I mentioned he was a guy who I thought had a chance, although I felt that Jaden Noble was likely the strongest. But Julius Dyer, who unfortunately is Ricky Babylon's tag team partner, wins. The only reason I say unfortunately is that one of the points of this Intercontinental title was to get the titles dispersed more broadly than they are right now. And if a guy who's already part of the tag team championship along with Ricky Babylon ends up winning the Intercontinental title, might not be as much additional flexibility as I had hoped in terms of scheduling. But 3.5-star match quality, good reactions. Dyer obviously comes out with a lot of momentum and a good strong match score of 75%. Let's hope we have a similar result among the heels. And as kind of anticipated there, Ryan Mooney does come out with the victory. Not quite as high of a final score, but the match quality was very high. Just perhaps some of those wrestlers are not quite as popular. Last but not least, promotions ahead of London, and strong result there given the production quality, musical performer gimmick of Mercedes Rose, and then lots of star power and good looks in the 3W promotion at this point. So we got to a 70, would have been capped out at 72. Certainly the Fire and Ice and Nasty Girls match didn't help us, and a couple of those earlier matches were not incredible, but we still did what we needed to do and got to our cap as far as the score. Check in on the finances now as we move forward to the next day. Alex Wolf is an injury, as we know. Going to miss half a year. He's going to be out until July, so that's certainly not ideal, especially as I mentioned with Ansley Howard just about to return. $243,000 in pay-per-view income and 4,600 tickets sold for the big event of the month. So a smaller show coming up in New York City, and then 12 days until we're in London, baby. And as we get ready for our first show ever in Europe in just a couple of days, we did sign Xander Berry to an extension. I had mentioned earlier he wasn't necessarily critical to our future, but and I think that there's definitely multiple angles to consider, and one of the things that did influence me to keep him is that he's actually a pretty positive presence backstage, a +9 there, and he's a guy who is not all that expensive if you look at the terms of his contract extension, just $2,500 a month, and we only extended him for a year. But he is a person who has been with us for a long time at this point. Feel like Katie St. Clair at least will appreciate us showing some loyalty to one of the wrestlers that we've been building upon for the last several years. Not a long-term commitment, but going to allow Xander Berry to make some legitimate money with us going forward, or from us going forward, and hopefully help keep the backstage morale at a high level. You can see we are very strong there right now. The upcoming show in London is going to be a real good test of our finances. Again, we're going to have a massively expensive show because we've got all three of the wrestlers that we recently brought over from GCW on the card, so that's going to make it expensive. And given that it's also going to be taking place on the last day of the month, the hopefully positive finances associated with the television rights back in North America will not hit until the month of February, and you can see the very limited crowd that we're going to have, given that we essentially have no presence in London, will also not hit until the month of February. We'll see what our profile in Europe looks like coming out of this event. Positively, when we think about our roster, we do have some wrestlers who are popular in Europe among people who have been with us: Ricky Babylon, Cowboy Landon Brown, Julius Dyer, unfortunately the injured Alex Wolf, Bobby Ray Wright, Jaden Noble, all have modest to high levels of popularity there. And of course, as you might expect, Andre Freeman, River Tate, and Riley Young, who all came to us from a much more prominent promotion historically than 3W has been, have popularity there as well. So although we're not known much as a promotion over there, the hope is that we'll have a successful result in London. And it's time for the wild world of wrestling to begin its foray into Europe with a show in London. Not expecting a lot of people to be there in person, unfortunately, but we'll see how the show goes. Good reaction to the introductions of the women's wrestlers who are going to be involved, and you can see a boost to both North America and European popularity for some or all of them, which is positive. Hopefully helps us continue to build some momentum going forward. Emma Banks against McKenna McKee. McKenna McKee, a relatively new addition, got the victory over one of our veterans, Emma Banks. Alani Hernandez and Riley Young. Not a surprise that Riley Young gets the victory. Alani Hernandez had been undefeated in singles wrestling and our women's champion for such a long time. She will be getting a title opportunity against Mercedes Rose in the not too distant future, but with the popularity of Riley Young, wanted to ensure that we used her over here in Europe to hopefully start building up the popularity of our promotion. Introduce the crowd in London to a tag team match between the Right Stuff and the Horde, and the Right Stuff, Bobby Ray Wright and Josue Melton, get the victory. On to a big match. Cowboy Landon Brown, as we mentioned, a wrestler who had some existing popularity in Europe, wanted to ensure that we had him on the card, and he gets the victory over Kyle Howard in a match where we got a final score of 67%. Hopefully some of these final matches, Freeman and Tate, the Intercontinental Championship, and then the Men's World Championship will all get good reactions as well. Andre Freeman against River Tate, 88% match score there, so that's huge for us. Match quality very high, obviously two very experienced and well-established wrestlers. Freeman, with the victory, continues to build on his popularity around the world. And now for a new title, Ryan Mooney versus Julius Dyer. I mentioned my preference probably is not that Julius Dyer wins this, but we're going to let the match go based on who has the highest quality. And Julius Dyer is your new 3W Intercontinental Champion. So 80% final score, which is very good. Dyer gets the W. So Ricky Babylon is your men's world champion. Julius Dyer is your men's intercontinental champion. And Ricky Babylon and Julius Dyer, known as the Dream Team, are your men's tag team champions. So I have a feeling we may be scripting a loss for Julius Dyer in the future, or perhaps just hoping that he loses that intercontinental championship naturally. Still have another belt that's out there, but would ultimately like there to potentially be a little more diversity among the number of different wrestlers we have who hold different belts, and Dyer winning the inaugural Intercontinental Championship is something that'll never be taken away from him, but it certainly doesn't add to the number of wrestlers we have with belts, since he already was part of the tag team champions. Last but not least, good strong finish between Ricky Babylon and Garrett Carter. Figured we would give the fans in Europe probably the most prominent match of our promotion over the last year. The battles between Ricky Babylon and Garrett Carter, gotten some really good scores in the past. Performance not as good as usual today for Carter, but 3 straight matches with scores of 80% or higher. Going to likely help ensure that we get to a very impressive result for our first foray into Europe. You can see a nice bump for the wrestlers in both North America and Europe coming out of the final production. Did some high production quality there. And we will end the show. Could have been an 82. I think that's the highest show score we could have potentially have. Got a popularity gain in both North America and Europe. So starting to make some progress and starting to expand internationally. I do like the fact that when we go into new geographies with those shows, we can still get a momentum going back home with the fact that the pay-per-view will be shown in North America. You can see we had almost 29,000 viewers there, made $276,000, only sold 158 tickets. So getting the live fans into the building, certainly going to take some time, but we did what we needed to do, and we've now expanded into multiple regions, although you can see our popularity in Europe still not even registering yet. And merchandise sales for the month of January, certainly as expected, still driven by Ricky Babylon. Taking a look at the finances, and we made over $300,000 despite some massive expenses. We did sign a lot of people to extensions, which, as we've talked about with the upfront signing bonuses, boosted staff wages a bit, and obviously those two cards where the new wrestlers from GCW were involved was over $200,000 alone just between the two cards where all three of those wrestlers appeared. So the fact that we were still able to make some money here is positive. Network deals real strong. You can see that some of that money not going to hit until February, as we noted. Very low ticket sales from the London event, but we're still $6.5–7 million, so financially still in a pretty strong position compared to what we've gotten used to. Backstage morale still very strong. I do think with the expensiveness of Freeman and Young and their negative presences, we may look to move on from them when their 90-day PPA contracts with us are done. Although, honestly, if we're still making money and we're still maintaining 100 backstage morale, if they're willing to stay on PPA contracts, certainly something to consider. I don't know that we can afford $400,000 a month for Freeman or $180,000 a month for Riley Young or whatever exactly that they're looking for. Those are still big numbers for a promotion of our size at this point. Thinking about production quality, continuing to make over $100,000, well over $100,000 a month. Unfortunately, most of the next steps up for us in terms of improvement are pretty expensive. Need $500,000 a month to improve our writing, $750,000 a month to improve video production or pyrotechnics, $1 million a month for improving staging and lighting or camera quality at this point, $1.5 million for licensing of music, $500,000 for a small office, and then $1 million for a huge marketing campaign. So to me, there's not an obvious answer as far as what the next step is as far as improving our production quality. We're hitting the 70 each show. So we are capped at this point, but as we saw last month, a lot of the shows we were only a handful of points above that 70 score. So I think we're going to hold tight at least on increasing production values right now. I think one of our strengths is that our finances continue to improve compared to where GCW is, and I don't think we want to just necessarily give that away, even though we could certainly support a deficit with the money that we built up. Interestingly, momentum for us, and you can see popularity in North America continues to spike with those recent additions of ours. We've actually pretty consistently been winning the promotional war with GCW and in recent weeks APW as well. So we are making some progress against the big boys, and the hope is that we can continue that momentum in the month of February. And we've continued to make good progress in the early stages in the month of February. 2 events in the books, 3 left to go. Had an event in Killington, Vermont, where we sold out a relatively small facility, hit the 70% score card, and also had a good pay-per-view performance. And then last week we did 3W Live in February, sold that one out as well. Had a couple of championship matches. The women's championship was retained by Mercedes Rose, and the Dream Team defended their men's tag team championship. Sold out, strong pay-per-view numbers, and we would have scored over 80% if we weren't restricted. Had a pretty good balance, some pretty low-rated matches at the beginning of the event, but the final 3 matches were all 80% plus scores, which is certainly very helpful for us. So the good news is that we've been consistently beating GCW in the promotional wars, and we've oftentimes even been beating APW on a week-to-week basis, even though they're obviously much wealthier than us. We've been doing a good job against them, and you can see the slope of our improvements with much better results in the promotion wars is kind of similar to the slope before we first got involved in the promotion wars, and we're losing to those more established companies much more consistently than we are now. So continue to make some progress, which is definitely positive. We did unfortunately have one other injury issue. Cameron Bright, relatively new addition to the team, going to be out until towards the end of March, so not quite as serious as the injury that Alex Wolf suffered, but still going to impact us. And with both of them being faces, we're a little long on heels and short on faces right now, but we'll figure that out. We can have some heel-on-heel matches to ensure that everyone gets enough work. Really enjoying the game still at this point, as we've now been playing it for a couple of months, but it is still technically in early access on Steam for those of you who are interested in picking it up, although it's been that way for close to 5 years now, so not really sure how many further refinements are coming, but just a couple little things that we've noticed. We have noticed that when we have people whose contracts are coming up, that we've also already renegotiated with them, they double count them in the wrestler count as faces and heels, and you can kind of see that on the backstage morale. Marissa Wynn is listed in multiple spots as a pretty positive influence, with actually different scores, which is kind of interesting. And the same thing with Valentino Ballard. People are listed twice when they're in that situation where they're still on a pay-per-appearance contract that hasn't expired, but we've already renegotiated a longer-term contract with them. So that's just one little quirk in the game. The other thing is a little more significant. It seems like every year when the standing events come up, and I would be able to show it better to you on another screen, and I fixed it at this point, but Boston is an event that we've had in the past, and we've now got it set up for a local small arena in Massachusetts, but after we run the event, it seems like it always defaults to a different state, which is kind of weird and a little bit annoying, because I guess I don't technically have to go through and constantly fix those things, but I do. I don't know if we'll see the example here with like the 3W New York City event. Yeah, there's a good example right here. We did the 3W New York City event just couple of weeks ago, had it set up to be in New York, and now when we look at the event for next year, it's defaulted to Michigan. So not a huge issue. I'm going to go and fix those because I am so focused on ensuring that things line up properly, even though they probably don't really matter. Oh, let's see what happened with the Killington event that we did just a few days ago. Yeah, and now that's pivoted from Vermont to Massachusetts for some reason for its location next year. So little things like that are a little bit annoying. Not a major issue when we were only in North America, but it is something that I'm going to have to remember to keep an eye on, because if, for example, our show in London last year defaults to being back in North America and I haven't fixed it, kind of defeats the purpose when we go to London next year if we're not actually in London. So those are just two little quirky, buggy type things with the game that I've noticed that hopefully will get fixed at some point in the future. The double counting of the faces and heels and the double counting of people when they're in that mode in terms of backstage morale really doesn't bother me all that much. Having to constantly go in after you've set an event to be in a specific location and then each year it resets to something else is a little bit more annoying to me and just causes some manual labor that at some point I may stop doing. Turning our attention back now to more positive things, because most of the things about the game are certainly positive from my perspective. We have a 3W Winter War, a new event on February 17th, coming up just 2 days away. And this is one that I am really looking forward to. Because when you look at these events, typically I've been scheduling normal and high priority events, and I never in the past have done anything except that. But we have made 3W Winter War a huge importance event. The first time we've tried doing that, feel like we've got a skilled enough crop of wrestlers that we can put on a real big time show. And importantly, that moving from normal and high priority events to the huge event in the Winter War, and you can see our Jingle Bell Blast in December is also going to be a huge event. We've got a few others in there throughout the year. Opens up some additional options. You may remember that based on our cult status and our size, we've only been able to, when we look for TV transactions, to have access to tiny and small libraries. But what I found out is when we do a huge event, that actually gives us access to if I can find it here, gives us the opportunity to put pay-per-view or television on an average size network with much higher minimum viewership. So the 3W Winter War is going to be the first thing that we put on Dish Live North America, which is an average network, higher minimum viewership. Now, not sure whether or not this is going to work for us or against us, because you'll remember pay-per-view, our viewership has typically been 25, 26, 27,000. So I don't know if they are guaranteeing us that minimum viewership of 64,000 or if we're not going to get paid unless we get to 64,000. I can kind of interpret that either way. We'll find out very shortly. But I'm pretty excited that the huge event does open apparently another size network, whether it's pay-per-view or broadcast television, for us to be involved in. So I think there's a chance that we get a much bigger revenue number from this upcoming event. And the other thing that we will see shortly with the Winter War is a huge event. The potential attendance is significantly higher than we've ever had before. So this will allow us to book a 10,000 capacity arena, which is going to cost us more than twice what the 5,000 capacity facilities we've been using have been. But clearly, if we get almost 9,000 people in attendance, that will be a big-time new record for us. We've got a big card here. Some of the GCW wrestlers who are on PPA contracts are going to be here. Riley Young making $40,000, Andre Freeman making $50,000. So it's going to be a expensive card for us, but I think both in terms of attendance at the event and potentially the attendance on pay-per-view, the fact that we're making this a huge event gives us an opportunity to really take our revenue up to a next level. And we'll find out in just a couple of days whether or not that works out. And as we get ready for the big Winter War, the first huge event ever for the Wild World of Wrestling promotion, the mail flow is still good. Promotional War report, we edged out APW again this week and had a more clear victory against GCW. So popularity continues on a good trajectory upwards. And who knows what we're going to look like coming out of this Winter War event. Maybe the gains from a huge event like this, if it goes successfully and we can get that score up to 70% plus, perhaps it's going to have an even bigger impact on our growth going forward. So ready to do the big event. Mentioned the wage is going to be expensive. We've sold out 5,000 capacity arenas a few times in the past with high priority events, but this huge event looks like we're going to be hopefully 88-ish% full of a 10,000 person arena in New Mexico as we continue to build out our geographic reach. Start off the show with introductions ahead of a few of the women's matches that we have on board today. The first match involving women, Riley Young, the wrestler who's on a PPA contract with us from GCW. Workers really pushed themselves to make an impression on the audience, given that it was a big show, and a 71% score there. So that's kind of a nice feature where the wrestlers know it's a huge show and they're pushing themselves to even do better. You can see almost a half a point increase in popularity for Riley Young coming out of this match. I can't ever remember seeing such steep gains from a single match before. So if we see more of those with successful matches, a good sign that maybe we should be trying to put a few more huge cards together. Second match of the day, Juan Pablo Saavedra beats Bowen White. They both have pretty good entertainment skill. We tried to put a little comedy in the match, and that went reasonably well. So another good quality result and a solid score for some of these early matches. Malcolm McKnight and Judah Horn, 59%, and the workers really pushed themselves here too. That's good to see. 0.3 of a point boost for the victory from Malcolm McKnight. Now getting into some of the big matches, we've got 5 matches left on the card, 3 of which will be title matches. First, the Women's Tag Team Championship, and the Nasty Girls, Alani Hernandez and Kirsten Holloway, retain their title. Half a point increase in popularity in North America for Alani Hernandez, so that's really positive, and it's kind of really cool to see that the workers generally pushing themselves and oftentimes having some success. Like I said, I could definitely see us having more huge shows if this one works out well. Tag team match now, the Ranch Hands versus the Dread Duo. And the Dread Duo, Garrett Carter and Daniel Schwartz, with the victory over Cowboy Landon Brown and Skylar Trevino. You can see, though, that although the positives, 0.6 of a point improvement for Daniel Schwartz in popularity, can be much bigger at these huge shows, the negatives for those who lose are much more significant as well with this type of publicity. Cowboy Landon Brown taking a 0.4 of a point decrease to his North American popularity with the loss. That is something that, as I think about huge shows going forward, maybe script the results for more of the shows to ensure that we're giving a push in popularity to the wrestlers that we really want to have it. Julius Dyer against Kyle Howard, and this will be the first potential defense of the title, the new Intercontinental belt that Julius Dyer holds. My hunch is he should win this match pretty easily, and he does get the victory over Kyle Howard, successfully retains the title, even though his performance was actually much worse than usual, but still a 70% score. And then a couple of matches left, Andre Freeman versus Chris Jackson, and then Elias David versus Ricky Babylon for the 3W World title that we expect to have really good scores. Andre Freeman and Chris Jackson, 83% score, 91% match quality. Those two really came through, putting on such an incredible match, impressed the crowd, raised the popularity of everyone involved. So a huge boost for the winner Freeman, and only a small regression for the loser Jackson. Last match of the day, Elias David and Ricky Babylon. Another big score there. Ricky Babylon successfully retains the championship. As we often do, promotional video going out gets a big score. More boosts to fan interest from everyone involved and highlighted in the video except for Ricky Babylon. So when all is said and done, we could have scored an 80, and we gained 0.4 of a point in popularity, so twice as big as the typical boost that we've got out of most shows. So definitely incentive in terms of building popularity to have more huge shows going forward, but certainly going to feel a lot of pressure to ensure that we get to the 70% score when we do those larger shows. And now, checking in on the financials. Ooh, I love that almost straight up spike in terms of our popularity coming out of that show, and I'm sure this show will be good for us in the promotional wars, although we've got a smaller show in San Diego coming up that might also factor into this week's score. Julius Dyer increases his booking fee dramatically as he becomes a much more important wrestler. You can see $1,800 a show to $4,800 a show. He's a guy who's also going to have his contract up in a few months. He's looking for $60,000+ a month in terms of salary for us to extend him. But given how important he's become to us and how talented he is, might be something we need to do. And you can see being able to have that huge event on Dish Live had a huge impact for us. I think the most that we've ever made in previous pay-per-view shows is in the range of the 270, 260, 276 million, 273 million that we've made in some of our more recent shows. But being able to get this onto a much more significant network with over 73,000 viewers netted us over $700,000 in income just from this one show. So definitely think we'll be doing more huge shows going forward, because apparently they are very lucrative for us at this point, and it did look like that $64,000 or 64,000 number was a guaranteed minimum that we should get if we dealt with a average-sized pay-per-view vendor rather than a threshold that we needed to get over to get paid. Also sold over 9,000 tickets, so over $300,000 in ticket sales, both records for us, and revenue between the ticket sales and the pay-per-view over $1 million just from that one event. So certainly feel like there should be some more huge events in our not too distant future, because if we run them right, like apparently we did with this one, they can be very, very lucrative. And we just completed our fourth card of the month in San Diego. Tried to get some lower card wrestlers action in the show while still trying to get to a 70% score. Unfortunately, for the first time this year, we did not quite get there. You can see a 68% score. Ricky Babylon retained his title against Juan Shepard. You'll note that I did have a match between Valentino Ballard and Jaden Noble on the card. In the undercard with some other less attractive matches, simply because that was something that Valentino Ballard had requested from us, wanted to work with Jaden Noble, and was hoping to keep that promise that I made to him. But you'll note that we didn't get any feedback that that promised match between Valentino Ballard and Jaden Noble has taken place. I think this may have something to do with the fact that technically there are two Valentino Ballards right now because he's still on the PPA contract, and then we've also signed him to the extension with the written contract, and it looks like they may have credited that match to the other Valentino Ballard rather than the one who asked for it. I'm not going to go ahead and give them, well, at least not right now, at least not in Boston. I guess I could still do it at the Live in March event, but given that I'll never be really sure which Valentino Ballard, since there's two of them I'm setting up with the match, seems like that's just like one more little buggy quirk that can unfortunately happen. I feel like this happened to me a couple of years ago also, where I was confident that I had set up a match with somebody and that they hadn't, and I didn't get credit for it. And I don't think I realized that there was that potential double counting that would be going on when people were on an existing contract and then they had already been signed to an extension. So that's probably the explanation from when that happened a couple years ago. But little quirk, not a major issue. We'll try to set up this Boston event in 5 days so that we can ensure ourselves a 70% plus score. So hopefully a little higher quality card than our first foray to San Diego. And Ryan Mooney's asked to work with Ricky Babylon. Mooney is one of the better young wrestlers we've got, so that's something that we can definitely set up. We'll get a Ryan Mooney versus Ricky Babylon title match, whether it's for the World Singles Championship or a Tag Team Championship TBD, but we'll make sure to do that. Promotional War beat APW again this week and easily took care of GCW. So continue to see our popularity soar. Hopefully we can keep that momentum going. And we're getting ready for the final show of the month and the final show of the episode, as it will end up. 3W Boston today in Boston. We are going to try to get Valentino Ballard that match that he asked for. You'll remember that he was promised a match against Jaden Noble. We gave them a singles match last time, credited to the wrong Valentino Ballard. We're going to give them another match, tag team match between a couple of face teams here, the Southern Gentlemen versus the Golden Warriors. Hopefully we'll get credit for that one. A couple of championships on the card today. Notably the Women's Championship, Kirsten Holloway will be challenging Mercedes Rose, and then the Intercontinental Championship, Julius Dyer versus Ryan Mooney, in a rematch of that bout from about a month ago when Julius Dyer won the original Intercontinental Championship. Expect to sell out 5,000 person arena in Massachusetts. The excess, though, of 164 people doesn't justify us trying to move up to a 10,000 person facility, but good to know that when we have a huge event rather than a high priority event like this one, we can put a pretty good crowd in a 10,000 person arena, which is definite significant progress for us over the past 5 or so years since we started this relationship as the booker with the Wild World of Wrestling promotion. Introductions ahead of the women's matches, as they always do, due to the good looks and star power of the wrestlers involved, get a good reaction from the fans. American Girls versus the Spice Girls in a tag team match, and a relatively new team, the Spice Girls. McKenna McKee and Ansley Howard get the victory. Only a 53% score, not the highest quality match in the world. Hopefully that 53% will be the lowest score on the card. Kirsten Holloway facing off against Mercedes Rose. Mercedes Rose did retain the championship, but good to know for the future. They've got pretty bad chemistry as opponents. Their timing was all over the place, so probably won't give Kirsten Holloway another shot at Mercedes Rose anytime soon. A couple of heel teams here, and Chris Jackson and Juan Pablo Saavedra, the Horde, defeat Hughes and Simpson. Kason Hughes and Jake Simpson. 3.5-star match quality, 62% score. So our scores are increasing as we move through this card. Hopefully we can keep that type of pattern going. Same score here for the tag team match between the two teams of faces. Jaden Noble and Bowen White defeat the Southern Gentlemen, Valentino Ballard and Edward Grant. Did give Ballard another match against Noble. Hopefully the game will like this setup. 55% score for Keith Yates and Kyle Howard, a couple of wrestlers that we still struggle exactly what we're going to do with them and how they fit into the promotion going forward. So disappointing to have that score headed in the wrong direction. Going to need a couple of big scores from these longer final bouts, and then hopefully a big score from the promotional materials, which we specifically excluded Ricky Babylon from this time. He's not on the card, and we want to try to still put together good scores with the videos and the promotions and not be completely reliant on him. So we'll see how these last three pieces of today's card work out. Big score between Cowboy Landon Brown and River Tate. River Tate with the W, 79% final score certainly helps us. Hoping for another big match and a big result between Julius Dyer and Ryan Mooney. And we did get it, 3.5-star match quality, 82% score. They aimed to steal the show, and they did a good job of it. Julius Dyer successfully retains the Intercontinental Championship. So a couple of big scores at the end of the card, and certainly would expect the video promotion to be received well. Able to get a 100% score, even though, as I noted, Ricky Babylon was not included. So that's positive. We did get to a 70, could have been as high as 76. So a good finish to the month. Like last month, we've got a card on the final day, so we won't get the proceeds from that until the month of March. But clearly with the big financial boost we got from the Winter War event, expecting that February will be the most successful month in the history of the 3W promotion financially, even though the $280,000 in pay-per-view and $175,000-ish in ticket sales will not hit the balance sheet and income statement ultimately until the end of March. Taking a look at backstage morale at this point, and still at a 100 level. We've still got the two Valentino Ballards, and unfortunately, even though we've set up two straight matches, a regular match and a tag team match with Valentino Ballard against Jaden Noble, apparently it's picked the wrong Valentino Ballard each time. I don't know that we're going to waste another match between those two at 3W Live in March, but good to see backstage morale still very strong. Thinking about the storylines that we've been involved in, We Want Your Belt and Welcome to You also remain very strong. And then the three new storylines also off to really good solid starts. The New Generation with the 89 heat rating. Title is Mine with an 83. And Pleased to Meet You with Andre Freeman, Riley Young, and River Tate, the three former GCW wrestlers who are on PPA contracts. 94 heat there with those very talented wrestlers. So continue to do some damage with the storylines. Hopefully, ultimately, that will manifest itself in bumps in the popularity of those wrestlers when we do finish up those storylines in the coming months. Merchandise-wise, continue to have more and more wrestlers involved in selling merch. Ricky Babylon has been in that 30,000 plus a month number for several months at this point. He still is far and away the most popular wrestler we've got, but we're building out a little bit of diversification over time, which is certainly helpful. Finish things off by taking a look at the finances, and as expected, easily the most profitable month in 3W history, with $1.4 million in earnings for the month of February. And as I noted, the revenue from that last event in Boston not even included. The big difference, of course, was the network deals. The fact we were able to get that huge show for us onto an average size network really pushed the financial situation into entirely different stratosphere for us. So I'm not expecting that we're going to make $1.4 million every month. When you look at the event list and potentially creating a new event, Huge is a show that should be considered one of the biggest year, very high expectations, large popularity gains and losses, and huge viewer interest, typical for a flagship pay-per-view. Don't know that I'm going to do one of those every month, although maybe there's no reason not to. I think I am going to change the schedule a little bit. I think I am going to ensure that we only have one 60-minute normal show each month going forward, and then have a lot of high quality shows, probably around 90 minutes. That'll also help us give the wrestlers, since we have a larger stable of wrestlers than we have in the past, more work, and hopefully keep them happy. And maybe we'll do a huge show every month, but if not, I'm expecting 4 to 6 huge shows a year as a minimum. Certainly seem to be a good way to really give our finances a strong boost. And as we finish up the episode and start planning for March, I want to make sure that we remain thoughtful about how we put the cards together. Mention that we're already going to be looking to have perhaps more high priority shows and some huge shows and fewer normal shows. Seems like we can definitely support that at this point. Popularity, Ricky Babylon at a 100 in North America, and you can see we've got a much more popular wrestler base with about 10 or 12 wrestlers with 50 plus popularity in North America at this point. Now a fair amount of them are still on pay per appearance contracts. The most interesting one for us is going to be Julius Dyer. As I mentioned, he's looking for really big money for an extension, but only 24 years old. His wrestling skill has moved up steadily while we've been working with him. Entertainment value moving up steadily. The looks and the star power, both strong, and the star power is actually increasing, getting more intimidating. But it's going to be expensive. Actually, can't get the renegotiate button here. He does have a written contract with Alpha Pro Wrestling. He was in, I guess, what is now one of our main competitors in their farm system, so to speak. I believe that's Mountain Valley Wrestling. He was called up with them late last year, and he does have a written contract with them. But it did look like when I pulled him up in a different way that we still could have the opportunity to discuss an extension with him a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, as I mentioned, $66,000 a month and a $66,000 signing bonus. I honestly feel like that price is likely to only increase, and I also don't want to get ourselves into a situation where we could end up losing him permanently to APW, since he does have that written contract with them. So we are going to potentially make a pretty big investment here in continuing to build, hopefully, around Julius Dyer. We're going to offer him a 5-year contract. Going to try to lower the pay per appearance a bit. Actually, almost cut it in half. Willing to pay him $60,000 a month. We'll give him a bigger signing bonus of $100,000. Still have him involved in travel expenses, but I only think his price is going to get more expensive, and given his age, I only think his abilities are going to get higher. So although it's extremely expensive for us, he is one of our more popular wrestlers also in Europe. I think he's benefited from that relationship with APW. I don't know if this is going to be good enough for him to sign it or even consider it, because as I noted, although we're giving him a bigger signing bonus, the pay per month is about 10% lower than what he's asking for, and the pay per appearance is about half of what he's asking for. Figure we can justify the bigger signing bonus, since if this all goes well, we'll have him with us for 5 years. He says he's going to consider the offer, so the big cliffhanger as of the end of this episode is going to be whether or not we can get Julius Dyer signed for the long term. And if we do get him signed, since his contract is not set to expire for several months until the end of July, may find ourselves in the situation where he's asking for matches, and as much as we try to give him those matches, it goes to the doppelganger Julius Dyer rather than the actual Julius Dyer. But if that's the biggest problem we have going forward, not that big an issue. Feel like we're continuing to make good progress with the wild world of wrestling promotion, and looking forward to continuing building out things, give some consideration to whether the likes of Andre Freeman and Riley Young and River Tate could be longer term answers for us. With the money that they're looking for, I think we have to keep them pay per appearance at this point. But again, if we start adding in those huge events where we can bring in $1 million in one show, then it's not impossible. River Tate at this point looking for $150,000 a month. Riley Young looking for $181,500 a month, and then the extremely talented Andre Freeman looking for $423,500 a month. So those numbers still make me sick to my stomach a bit, but with the way we have been performing financially, you can see our finances are fine, and the revenue is increasing in a very dramatic fashion. Maybe we can afford to be a bit more aggressive with some of these contracts going forward. So once again, a lot of things for us to think about. As always, appreciate the interest for those of you who are still watching or listening at this point. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, always appreciate that, and always appreciate hearing suggestions, comments, and feedback from the board of directors in the comment section down below. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.